Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. Personnel Administration and Higher Education. As everybody knows, we have a pretty full day today with occupancy tax and finance after us. So we're going to try to move through as quickly as possible. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, please? Thank you, Supervisor Conover. Second by myself. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, we're going to jump right into it. We have a presentation today by Yeager and Flynn to discuss flexible spending accounts. And I believe Matt Schuett is here. If you could come to the podium, please. That way everybody can hear you, especially those on the live feed.
Good morning and thank you. So yes, I was told I have 10 minutes, which is now less, probably, right? So
You're okay.
yeah. Well, I'm happy to be here to discuss this. And I guess first thing I want to describe is, and I'm usually here talking about insurance products, you know, the health insurance renewal, the dental, et cetera. This, what I'm going to talk about today is not insurance. It's a flexible spending account that we're considering offering to your employees as of open enrollment as of December 1st. And show of hands, how many of you are familiar with it or have ever had one of those type of accounts? Flexible spending. Yeah, a couple. So essentially what you're really doing with it at the simplest point is, if you think about it today, your employees for their provider, their doctor copays or pharmacy copays, dental visits, et cetera, they're paying for that out of their pocket with after-tax money that they've already been taxed on a federal, state, FICA, all that basis. And whereas what a flexible spending account does, and it's just the basic basis, is that it converts that money and allows them to pay for their medical, dental, vision expenses, et cetera, on a pre-tax basis. And I'll give you a quick example. If somebody today is spending $1,000 on predictable expenses, you know, they have 3 prescriptions a month and they have X number of provider visits a year, and that's predictable, and they are spending that today, $1,000. A flexible spending account that's employer sponsored essentially just allows them to take that $1,000, have it come out of their account over the 26 times a year that they're paid, 26 pays. They would have, if they want to do it, $38.46 available or coming out of their pay on a pre-tax basis. And then we will be giving them a debit card that they can use to pay for their copays and doc visits, you know, all that stuff. And that transition where you're moving it from post-tax to pre-tax, that $1,000 is now taken out pre-tax over the course of the year, because they're not paying taxes on that amount. That actually is going to save them their tax rate, their 25, you know, call it 25% or so of taxes, which is going to make that $1,000 that they're paying for their medical expenses feel more like $750. Okay. And again, they can use it for any qualified medical expenses. Many people want to, if they know next year they're going to have big orthodontia expenses, as an example, they will put money aside pre-tax to pay for that. I want to pause there for questions, any on it whatsoever. Yes.
Just the program that I used to participate in, it was use it or lose it within the fiscal year. That's still applied here as well.
The IRS has evolved quite a bit on that. You can roll up to $550 over from year to year. So, and you're right, because that is the one thing that's always been there, use it or lose it with these accounts. But thankfully that came around a few years ago. So if somebody if they put away $1,000 and they don't use much of it, that, you know, they have $300 remaining, that $300 is not used, it just rolls into the next plan year.
That $1,000 is available from day one, even though you have not contributed.
Correct. It is available to them immediately, that $1,000. So it does help, you know, with budgeting also. So they're slowly, to some degree, paying it back. You think of it that way. But they have full access to it right away. Associated with this plan too is daycare, DCAP. You can have, that's part of the program. That is not pre-funded, however. That money, you only have what's available to you in that particular account. Okay, so we went over this last week with the working group. It was consensus at that point to put it on the program. It would be part of Employee Navigator of the elections that the employees have access to. It would show up on the system. Medical, dental, vision, they see it, then see the medical, dental, and vision, and then flexible spending account would be one of their options. And it's completely voluntary. They decide if they want it or don't want it, and then they would decide one way or the other, and we would absolutely educate them on if it's appropriate for them and all those steps.
Any further questions from the committee? Others? Go ahead, Supervisor Connor.
Yeah, no, just a comment. I mean, I think it's a great benefit to offer to our employees. If you know you're going to have the expenses, people know if they have daycare, they know how much it is, or if they have continuing medical expenses or other eligible expenses. The worry was always if you overshot the runway, you could lose it. But if there's a carry forward, like you're saying, that's a great new benefit to the program. Great asset for employees that they can take advantage of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
that was definitely the consensus in the working group. It's, why not offer this? Chairwoman?
Matt, thanks so much for coming in. I know time is limited today and you spent a lot of time with our working group, and that the budget officer has said he's happy to have this go through either his committee when it gets closer to budget or through personnel at a future meeting for a resolution, unless you're prepared to move forward today. But this is a long time coming. Thank you so much for working really hard on it. And I think it's another great tool and resource we have for our employees. So we really appreciate your hard work at this.
Sure. Thank you.
Committee, what's your pleasure? Do you want to put something forward? I think it's a good idea.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll move this forward either to the board or to the budget committee, whichever is appropriate.
Amanda, can you help? Does it need to go to budget or can we pass it through to the full board?
No, you can pass it through the full board.
Okay. Okay,
And that would be my motion.
great. Do I have a second?
I came in a little late, but I will second it because it really does sound like a great program, and I'll stand behind Supervisor Conover with his awesome comments, catching me up to speed. I'm
Speed.
coming a little late, so thank you.
Any further discussion? Now we'll catch the budget officer off guard too.
Yeah.
Are there any questions regarding, I know that you said this is the employees' money. Are there any direct expenses to the county as far as implementing the program?
There are, and there's a couple of things to note with that. There's a per participant charge associated with it. Any of you have ever dealt with debit cards, there's merchant fees in the background, and those, that holds for this as well. Important, while we're on that, it's an important point. These fees are almost always netted out because in the part of this flexible spending part of your cafeteria plan, the employee is saving their federal, state, and FICA taxes, but the other half of that is the employer also saves the FICA tax, and that almost always nets out any administrative fees that are part of it. Part of the administrative fees also too is it's important to note none of you turn into administrators or HR doesn't turn into an administrator. In other words, that's our role where we have to make sure and scrub every one of these receipts and make sure that they are approved by the IRS and fall under the code. So that's part of what you're paying for as well. But as far as at the end of the day, over the course of 12 months, it's almost always netted out by the tax savings.
All right,
Pretty
it
close to
sounds
zero.
good to me. I don't think go ahead.
Would we pay that fee directly to Yeager and Flynn?
Yes.
And so we would need a contract amendment, I would think, to add that.
Yeah. Yes. I agree.
Can we make that part of your motion, Supervisor Conover? Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Supervisor McGowan, are you okay amending your second to include the contract amendment to Yeager and Flynn?
Yes.
Without any further discussion, I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks again for your work on that. All right, I understand, yes, Larry is here to go into executive session to discuss the PBA negotiations and a proposed settlement. Could I have a motion to that effect, please? Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Conover. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Okay, so for those of you who are not part of you're gonna be there. Okay. Thank you, everybody who's here in the public for your patience while we work through that. We do have a motion that we'd like to make. It is, let me get my notes here. We will have two resolutions, but Amanda advises me that we can make one motion today to accept the terms of the MOU for the PBA and the Alliance, subject to ratification by those respective bargaining units and subject to execution by the chair, ultimately. Could I have a motion to that effect, please? Supervisor McGowan and a second by Supervisor Conover. Is there any discussion here? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. So we'll have that. Amanda will work that up for us in two separate resolutions. Thank you very much. All right, and without any objection from the committee members, I would like to take our next guest speaker so that he can present and get on to his next event. And this is Mr. Stephen Aquario, the Executive Director of NISAC. And we're very pleased to have you here in person in Warren County today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Supervisor Kramer and supervisors. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am a resident of Warren County as well in Horkin. I don't know if Supervisor Smith is here, but or on Zooming, I'm not sure. But it's great to be here, of course, in Warren County. And thanks for letting me come up for a few minutes. Want to give a quick update on opioid litigation. And this is the front page of the Albany paper, which I imagine is up here as well, the Times Union. Opioid giants settle for $1 billion. I was very involved in opioid litigation going back to 2016. All the New York counties ultimately participated in this litigation. It's a very tragic situation, losing so many New Yorkers and Americans to substance abuse, addiction, dependency, and in some cases death. But we had to step up, and Warren County stepped up as well as the New York counties, and we ultimately drove a settlement just for the state of New York for $1 billion in one particular group of defendants, the distributors. So working with Bob, your county attorney, on the Board of Supervisors should begin to get information coming from outside counsel about what this means for Warren County over the next couple of months. I'm hoping by year's end that there'll be some funds that come in. And I want to commend you on your tracker that you just launched in Warren County, tracking overdoses and substance abuse problems here in Warren County, and continue to put an emphasis and focus on this. We need to develop treatment programs. These funds will go to treatment programs that we get in. Just about all the dollars that we receive will need to go to prevention, treatment, and recovery programs. So I encourage you, work with your hospitals, work with your healthcare centers, and begin to understand what kind of prevention, treatment, recovery programs does Warren County have available. Any questions on opioids before I switch out of opioids into environment? Yes.
Sure. Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. With all this going on, Steve, and thank you for being so diligent, staying on this since 2016. But I guess my question, with all this going on and with the settlements and that, have you seen a trend of the opiate addictions going down?
We did in 2019, and in 2019, we did see the change in prescribing behavior. We saw a change in the distribution, and so we saw a reduction in the number of pills that were, and we did that. You, Warren County, the supervisors, the counties of New York, changed the medical rules for prescribing. So we saw the number of pills go down, and we saw the number of deaths go down and addiction go down. However, during COVID 2020 and into 2021, we saw an uptick and a swing back up. So our efforts were working and it does work, and prevention treatment recovery programs, people couldn't get their treatment during COVID, like chemo and other services, they couldn't get it. So ultimately we saw difficulties and problems come back. So hopefully with these funds, we can better address the problem.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Steve, I have a question to that effect. I know there was some talk about what the funds were going to be used for and or possibly diverted for other purposes. Is there any outcome on keeping those funds for medical treatment and services for people who are addicted or to prevent addictions?
Yes, there is no evidence-based medical or treatment programs like we have for cardiac, cancer, HIV type programs. There's evidence-based treatment protocols for those illnesses. For opioids and substance abuse, there hasn't been until now. And so as part of this settlement and a part of what you're going to see over the next couple of months are hundreds of approved uses that these funds can be used for prevention, for treatment, and recovery programs. So there'd be a long list of things the county can use for, and working with your providers in the county that they all have to work for and through, and the county will have a big role in this.
And I'm sure our Office of Mental Health Services will have a role in helping figure that out with our service providers.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Hopefully your sheriff will as well.
Yeah, good point. And probably the DA.
And the DA, probation.
Okay, thank you.
So just to have a brief PowerPoint here, this was the local in my, I live in Colony. So this was my local paper today when I opened it up. Today, do you know what's in tap water, in your tap water? And here it talks about arsenic, benzene, chlorine, giardia, and improper pH. But as we've seen in the next slide, Tammy, I'll just show a couple of slides here. An unregulated contaminant in the state of New York, in the United States, in the world, but largely in the United States, is PFAS. A lot of you heard of this. John's heard of this in Queensbury. The county has heard of this. Kevin's heard of this. The DPW, Bob's heard of this. Ryan's heard of this issue. Many of the supervisors have heard of this issue. I'm here to educate, inform on PFAS. This is very commonly used chemicals, probably the most used chemical carbon compound ever known to mankind. This was used and developed in the 50s and 60s, widely used in manufacturing, very resistant to water. And it's used in Teflon and your anti-stick pans and things of that nature. Used, everyone knows of Scotchgard on our couches, upholstery, pizza boxes to repel grease. This stuff was used in everything. These manufacturers used this type of chemical in manufacturing and in firefighting foam. It was used to put out fires. Why? Because it really repelled and was able to put out fires in an aircraft or a helicopter. But it's come to be commonly known as the forever chemical because it does not go away. It stays in our environment. It stays, a half-life of this in a human being is probably 10 years, 9 years. It takes a very long time to get rid of. In fact, you can't even incinerate it. And you saw what happened in Cohoes, New York, where the state of New York actually banned the incineration of PFAS. Why? Because you can't even incinerate it. They tried to do it. The Department of Defense was bringing these hundreds of millions of gallons of this and incinerating it in Cohoes. People of Cohoes got fed up with this, said you can't put it up in the air. It's coming down on our soil and it goes back into the environment and it just never goes away. Highly mobile in water. And it's been linked to similar types of health effects, kidney cancer, other types of cancer, in vitro problems with pregnancy, cholesterol, so forth, so on. Lots of tests on PFAS. So I won't show a bunch of slides, but next slide, I'll show just a couple. So the most common exposure pathway, you can see at the top there. I'm tracking this across the state of New York in landfills. State of New York is now testing all the landfills all Superfund sites across the state. Manufacturing, the emissions which contain PFAS or discarding it into the environment, think Hoosick Falls. These sources contribute PFAS into our drinking water. You see that far right, farms, wastewater treatment facilities to turning wastewater treatment into dry pellets. What are we doing with that? Anyone want to take a guess? Spreading it all over agricultural farmland. Again, leading towards leaching into our drinking water. The bottom left there, you see the military bases all across the state of New York, airports, other sources where we sprayed firefighting foam. I've taken calls from maybe a dozen New York counties on this issue right now, whether it's the airports of Warren or the airports of Oneida County, Dutchess, Westchester, Sullivan County, New York, same issue, all of us were forced to use aqueous film forming foam to spray mandatory FAA required exercises with firefighting foam, spraying it out there, practicing this either at the airport or at the fire training pits, the fire training centers, spraying it right off into the environment. Why? Because that's what the manufacturers told us to do through the MSDS sheets. Wastewater containing PFAS is that bottom chart there. And then again, the land application of biosolids. Next slide. So just another way of looking at that, this chart here shows PFAS in AFFF. This is the firefighting foam. This is largely why I wanted to come talk to you. You can see that you can't see it on the left side of it, but that's surface water. And you can see that surface water where the firefighting foam was used and practiced at the airport accumulates either in the surface water or in the groundwater where it goes down. It's either stored at airports all across New York State. Again, the fire training exercises in the groundwater, and it's a very common pathway here for affecting our environment. In my mind, if there is a detect of PFAS, PFOS, PFOA at an airport, we should be doing something about it and holding the manufacturers responsible for this, just like opioids in my mind. Next slide. We're regulating it in New York. When I was up here a couple years ago, I spoke to a committee, 2019. We talked about this issue.
Everyone may be thinking they stumbled into the Environmental Concerns Committee today. We did talk about this in the past at that committee when I was chair about the concerns.
I flagged it back then, but I thought that you should take action back then. But the reason why I'm back is there was just a health advisory by the United States government back then of 70 parts per trillion. It was 400 parts per trillion. They lowered it to 70 parts per trillion. But since then, see that second bullet there? State of New York has now set a maximum contaminant level of 10 parts per trillion for PFOS and PFOA. That's like an eyedropper in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. It is so minute, the detect of these types of contaminants. They should not be in our drinking water in our environment. And if they are, we need to do something about it. And then that last slide talking about the banning of incineration by PFAS and CAHOs. Next slide. This is from a presentation we did a couple of weeks ago at NISAC statewide. We had about 150 people on it, county officials. This was the state health department talking about the emerging contaminants for PFOA, PFOS. Next slide. Again, the pathways, consumer goods, your packaging, going into your landfills. Keep an eye on this. I'm just flagging it for you. It's in our food chain. It's in our environment, firefighting foam, manufacturing, and again, that wastewater treatment, we're tracking it. This is a slide from the Department of Health. Next slide. And again, the state of New York doing a couple of maximum contaminant levels for PFOA and PFOS at 10 parts per trillion, and or also for 1,4-dioxane, which I also flagged for you. And next slide. The last slide, this will just be the last slide. I won't take up too much more of the time here of the supervisors, but this just last slide talks about, look, our drinking water is safe. We have the safest drinking water in the United States. We have the highest quality drinking water across America, but importantly for the state of New York. We really have done a fabulous job of monitoring our contaminants in our water, testing. All public water systems now must be tested the state of New York and report it in. And that's a good thing. And we're checking for PFAS now. And I'm tracking this in landfills. I'm tracking this in airports, and I'm tracking it for county fire training facilities. Why? Because we're getting remediation letters from the DEC requiring us to treat this. The good news is we can treat it. The good news is we can get this out of our environment. The bad news is it can be expensive for capital expenditures and also for ongoing monitoring and maintenance of these filters and these water filtration systems, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we have to monitor it for 10, 20 years. So it's a long time. It costs a lot of money to remediate and make sure that the contaminant is out of our systems. Where we're getting hits in Rockland County Fire Training Center, Putnam County Fire Training Center as well, Dutchess, their airport, Oneida, their airport, Chautauqua Fire Training Pit, things of that nature, Saranac Airport, same issue, Westchester Airport, same issue. So I'm up here, encourage you that if we do see a detect here at the airport, that you should join. We're working with the Napoli firm, who is your attorneys, your outside counsel right now for opioids. There is no fee to the county on this. It's contingency based. There is no reason why we wouldn't want to encourage you to join in any way to protect yourself for damages that you might see down the line. You didn't cause this issue to be discharged into your environment. Let me make that clear. I'm talking with Ryan. We've talked about this in the past. You didn't cause this. WF Lake is right in an industrial park right next to the county airport. We're not about going after WF Lake, and it's not about the county discharging firefighting foam. We did what we were mandated to do in a safe, legal way. We were mandated to use this firefighting foam, and everyone did what they were supposed to do. What did these manufacturers know? What did they do about it? And did they warn end users of this product? So that's what I want to come up and talk to you about. I see it as a very emerging issue. There's already been 600 local governments, airports, wastewater treatment. The state of New York has also joined the lawsuit as well, but they're not representing Warren County's interest or the county's interest. They're representing their own interests. Just like opioids, got to have a seat at the table here. I do see eventually a trust being set up next 3 to 6 months, maybe even 9 months or a year, where funds will be set aside for remediation of this. So that's why I wanted to flag it. Again, we did nothing wrong. We followed our FAA mandatory responsibilities. This firefighting foam is largely banned in New York right now, but I encourage you to look around your town volunteer fire departments and make sure you get that stuff out of there. Took a call last week down in Westchester. I asked the supervisor to check it. His fire department called me back, says, yes, Steve, we've got several 500-gallon of this stuff sitting in our fire department. Can you help us get rid of it? Call the DEC. We don't have anywhere for you to take it, sir. You have to find somebody to take this stuff. It's like low-level radioactive waste, right? Nobody wants this stuff. So eventually you can't even incinerate it. So that's all I wanted to do. Come up, educate and inform, tell you about this issue. In my mind, this is the largest threat to our drinking water in our generation. This is a serious threat. Think of Hoosick and what happened there. That's not the situation in Warren County. It's not the situation at your airport. It's not the situation in Queensbury at the landfill right now. It's not the situation at all. But the presence of it is what concerns me. And the fact that it moves and is so permeable through soil, that it moves in one place so it could migrate over any unknown places. But the fact that if we get a detect of it, we got to keep an eye on it, and more important, we got to hold these manufacturers responsible for it. So that's what I wanted to come up and talk to you about. Give you a quick opioid update, and flag this issue of PFOS, PFOA for the board's attention. So,
well, thank you so much for coming. And I will remind the committee that I asked Mr. Aquario to come here along with Chairwoman Sieber because of the impact on the litigation, just like the opioid thing. So we're not here to talk about the, environmental remediation that may or may not be happening. We already dealt with the issue at the airport about changing out the training foam. We don't use the PFOAs anymore. That's been, settled a couple of years ago. But if there's any potential for us to partake or have a seat at the table on the litigation, I thought it was important that the committee at least hear about this opportunity and have a discussion about it. Chairwoman.
Thank you again, Steve, for coming up. Steve mentioned this to me at the NACO conference, and again, wanted to make sure that our committee and our members here had a chance to weigh in before we ran out of time. And that's really what I understand it to be, a time-sensitive issue, that if it's something we want to join, we need to be dealing with this now. And maybe you can speak just to that time.
Well, the reason why I brought it up was, I was here in 2019,
And yeah,
so that was 2 years ago. There's a 3-year statute of limitations, so that's why I flagged it. You don't have a problem, as Kevin can attest to, as your county attorney can talk to. You do not have a water quality problem in Warren County. Let me repeat that. You do not have a water quality problem. But what we had was a detect of PFOS at the airport, around the airport. We don't know how it got there. Could have been an industrial park adjacent to that area. The DEC has flagged this. There has been a spill, a reportable spill at WF Lake at the industrial park. It is there, it is present, and it is documented by the DEC. So I just flagged it. I was up here in 2019. I thought it was a concern back then, but now the state put the MCL standards in, and that was why I came back. And that's why I do recommend that you do join this. There's no harm to it in any way. It's a contingency fee, and only if they're successful. Any other questions on this or anything?
questions for
State budget,
Mr.
federal funding, federal funds, ARPA funds?
Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. Steve, I wonder if you could help me out. Early in my career, I was involved with Teflon.
Mhm.
And one of the things that was so popular about Teflon is that it was inert. It did not react with anything, which is along the lines of you can't incinerate it, you can't get rid of it, it sticks around a long time. My question relates to the top line of your last slide. It said it may be linked to health effects. May is a interesting word, right?
Mhm.
We don't have confirmation of that. What is the state of the confirmation of the
Yep.
health effects?
That's a good point. I think that the science has evolved. First of all, throw out the pans. I threw them out. Knowing what I know now about all those fans we had as kids, all of us as young adults, that was the big thing, the Teflon. I saved the sticker. I have it at my house. I'll send Ryan up a picture of the Teflon logo. They knew back then that there were studies that were linked to cancer, and it was discovered by 3M. We're really talking about 3M here, which is the largest manufacturer of the firefighting foam. About 80 to 85% was manufactured by 3M. But through these discovery of millions of documents in the Minnesota case, that they discovered that they knew back then in the 1970s, and they failed to warn the end user about the science and the adverse health effects. Since that time, there's over 600 local governments that have filed with massive discovery in a federal multi-district litigation in South Carolina, very similar to opioids. And what they continue to find is the adverse health effects and the science behind it. Not conclusively, but enough to show that there's an issue that they had noticed back then. They never shared that notice back then. They failed to warn, and that there's enough studies right now to justify that there is adverse health effects tied to this, potentially a la Huzik. So I
But
think the
again,
science
we
is there.
do not have that particular problem in Warren County.
You do not.
But I do think it would be prudent for us to preserve our rights to join the lawsuit. What's the pleasure of the committee?
You're not going to be the case that goes to trial
Right.
at all. That's already been decided. There are large systems across the United States that have been selected, just like opioids. Nassau and Suffolk counties were the counties who brought the litigation for the counties on behalf of the state of New York. There's other, we need to build critical mass. We have to send a message that we're not a litigious society. We're not just out there to litigate just to litigate, but when we have enough documentation to show that there was a discharge in our environment. We didn't cause it. You did. And you were responsible for releasing these manufacturers and distributors, that we should do something about it.
Yes, Supervisor Connell.
Question for our county attorney. Your recommendation at this point as being the county attorney?
Yep, without objection. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'd certainly like to look into it a bit more, just to make sure that there's no way at all that the county would have any adverse impact or liability on the county at all if there was anything like that. I mean, as I say, I kind of get paid to be paranoid, so I want to make sure there's absolutely no adverse impact at all of any kind towards the county based on this.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's.
Ron, I'm sorry. There was a comment that they can't hear
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that's a prudent thing to do, provided that you keep an eye on the concern regarding the statute of limitations.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so without jeopardizing the statute of limitations, you'd be prepared at some point in time to make recommendations to the board?
Yes, it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So on the liability issue, I mean, we already know that DEC has been out to the airport and found this. I 2 years ago, I said to Steve, it's possible DEC will come after us as a party. But I don't see how that getting involved in the lawsuit is going to bring any more liability on us than we already have, potentially. They know we exist as a, I'm going to say a spot on the map where this has been found.
Right, no, I'm not disagreeing with anything that was presented here today or any of your statements. I'm just think that on legal matters, we should have a recommendation directly from the person responsible for advising the board on legal matters. If he needs a little bit of time to look at this, to get back to Mr. Aquario and then introduce appropriate resolutions at the appropriate time and ensuring that the statute of limitations is protected, I'm good with that. I'm good.
Anybody else on the committee?
Well, yeah, my only comment is,
Supervisor
I know that we certainly, all the municipalities are testing their water, started testing water at least 2 years ago for these substances. Are these banned everywhere in the United States now?
Well, it's an unregulated contaminant by the United States. I had thought that I went down to Washington, the US EPA represented all the local governments in the United States in 2018 in the May summit. We thought that they would have taken action back then to regulate this contaminant, and they have not. They continue to have a health advisory out there, a health advisory, again, by the United States government. I think about 10 to 15 states have stepped forward. New Jersey, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Michigan, California, I think is almost at 2 parts per trillion. Almost 0 detect in California, and many other states as well are. So the states are driving this. New York has been a leader in it.
Okay, Supervisor Stroud had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and thank you for all the help that I know you've given the town of Queensbury and everybody else. You're that kind of proactive person, and I think we deeply appreciate that kind of leadership we're seeing. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
With the opiates, it was clear that we had damages. We had people who succumbed to opiate addiction. We had costs associated with enforcement, recovery, so forth. It was clear that Warren County was in and a stakeholder in that game. With the PFAS and PFOAs, it's just not as apparent that we have some kind of stake in the game there, because our water in Queensbury not detecting any PFOAs or PFAs. FW Lake, which we know seems to be associated with contamination, but that's in Washington County. So do we need to show that we had some kind of injury befall us here in Warren County to be part of this?
No,
Okay.
it's just to detect the presence of it in the environment.
Okay.
And I mean, who knows with this stuff? Medical monitoring. Who knows the potential damages in 10 years from now or whatever it might be that would come about from it. Remember, it's highly mobile, highly persistent. It shows itself in various areas, different locations, and you try to test it again and you can't find it. It's very, very mobile. But I would encourage all the towns and the cities to keep an eye on this, flag it, keep an eye on your landfills, watch your water tests, wastewater treatment, check your wastewater treatment plants, run some tests through there as well.
Brian wanted to say something?
Yeah, just as by way of update on this in terms of a monitoring and awareness issue, back in, I believe it was September last year when DEC declared a Superfund site over at WF Lake. I've been in touch with DEC since then. They're the regional leadership and have urged them, if practicable, when they choose their tests that they're doing, when they choose the wells that they're testing, to also be cognizant of the airport and to choose some to try to give us a sense of whether we do have an issue at the airport in addition to the issue over at WF Lake. And that is ongoing. I talked to Mr. Zalewski as recently as 2 days ago about that. So it is something we're trying to work with DEC on to get a better global view of what's out there.
Want to thank the supervisors.
Okay, thank you.
Chairwoman Bramer, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Any,
Yeah.
yep, one more Supervisor. Connell, if you have
Yeah,
time.
Steve, just on another topic,
Yes, sir.
on your way home to,
Wait, before we go on to another subject, a whole nother subject?
sure.
Okay. I'm inclined to take a motion that we move forward with litigation subject to review by the county attorney. Anyone on the committee?
Well, maybe the way to do it is if the county attorney and the administration feel an imperative on this, and after his review, I mean, I'm prepared to support a waive rule at any time on a subject like this, should legislation come from the county attorney relative to this. I'm a little hesitant, you understand, acting on a legal matter without the advice of legal counsel. I mean, surely you can appreciate that. I'm not against it. I just would like him to have a little time here to do his due diligence on this. And so I'm not.
Anyone on the
Against-
committee object to that path? Okay, that's where we'll go then.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
May I,
Yes,
just on your way, you said you live in Horicon. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
You know, if you're just a few miles south, you'd be in Bolton, you know, you missed the mark
I know
there,
where you live,
Steve, a
yes,
little bit, but
yes.
in any event, on your way home, if you could travel up Route 9N from Lake George to Bolton and perhaps even in Horicon, I don't know, I haven't been up that way. What you'll see, these long stretches of brown zones along our roadways. And what we have going on is apparently is, and I don't remember this ever to this extent, the spraying of herbicides by DOT along our roadways. And I know you're talking about water quality here today, and I mean, Lake George is right there, of course, as you know. And so we're presently trying to arrange some meetings and some discussion with DOT relative to best practices in this regard. But you get a chance on your way back home, if you travel 9N, just be aware that our New York State DOT has a practice here of spraying. I think they come under the pesticide regulations and regulated by DEC, but regardless, I can't recall such extensive spraying, but then again, maybe I was oblivious to it prior to this, but I would just put that on your radar.
Well, Supervisor, thank you.
all right. Thank you again, Stephen, for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much.
Okay, jumping back into our agenda, we are on human resources. And it looks like we need an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Thank you, Supervisor Garrity. Second by, thank you, Supervisor McGowan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. That carries. Thanks, everyone, for going back out. Thank you, everyone. We're live. We're coming back into open session. No action by the committee taken during executive session and none needed now. Go right to our HR Director, Jackie Figueroa, for review of items in her agenda.
Hi, good morning. For item D, I've attached the report of tracking of vacancies filled. And for item E is the update on terminations and exit interviews. If the numbers look a little different this month, it's because based on conversation last month, I did remove the sheriff's office. Since we don't do exit interviews, it was skewing our numbers a bit. So those have been removed from the chart. I'm happy to answer any questions on those two items. And I just have one discussion item based on our conversations with Larry earlier about the new contracts. Our out of unit policies generally follow along with the CSEA policy. So here to discuss increasing the percentage contribution for health insurance for out of unit employees hired before 2013. I would recommend at this point in the year that we follow what I believe the Alliance did, wait until December 1st and jump up 2%. CSEA went up to 19% on 7/1 and then to 20% on 12/1. So I'm suggesting for administrative purposes and to get through the board that we go straight to 20% on December 1st. Also, that would give me some time. There are some other changes that occurred during the contract that I would like to bring a redlined version to committee next month to include all of the changes because it's a large, 15 or 16 page policy that I would like to have the opportunity to bring the whole thing through this committee to go to the board in September for a change effective 12/1 with the new health insurance plan year.
So you're not looking for a resolution today, just kind of giving us a heads up, you're going to change. So CSEA will be going to 20% in December.
Yes.
And so you're looking for the out of unit. I think that's fine. Does anyone? All right. I think go that direction. Bring us the red line with all the changes, including the health insurance increase. Ryan?
And that's for 20 to 21% in 2022 and to 22% in 2023.
Okay.
Yes. And then just a public service announcement, the second round of county attorney interviews is scheduled for personnel committee meeting on August 17th at 12:45.
Thank you for that PSA and thank you for your report. Any questions for Jackie? Okay, thank you. Moving right along, we have the county attorney. Robert, is there anything that you can give us an update on in public or do you need to go into executive session?
Couldn't really do. Hi, good morning. I really
Good morning.
don't feel too comfortable doing much here in an open session on it. I really would prefer an executive session, please. I'm sorry to drag us into that again. We've
That's
spent
okay.
a lot of the morning on it, but
Do you have the case names for us,
I do.
please? Yep.
I do. Would be talking about the case of Morgan against Warren County and others, about the case of Matthew Keeley versus Warren County, also about the case of LeClaire against Vincent and others, Warren County and Warren County DSS. We're also defendants in that. Briefly about the case of John David Smith versus United Methodist Church, Warren County DSS, and other religious organizations also listed as defendants on that one.
Great. Could I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss litigation as just listed? Thank you, Supervisor McGowan. Second by Supervisor Conover. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you all.
Do some save some water here by.
Okay. Robert, I think this one is pretty straightforward. We're going to request the funding and it'll be determined by Finance Committee. Can I have a motion to that effect? For 2C regarding the Dickinson settlement?
Move it along.
Thank you. Could I have a second? Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll. Any discussion on 2C regarding this funding source. We're going to push it over to finance. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That carries. Okay, Ms. Allen.
So 3A is the resolution tracking report. I just noticed that that's missing from your packet, so I emailed it to all of you and we did post it online just a second ago. So when you get a chance to look at that, give me a call if you have any questions. 3B and 3C are both requests for funding to cover budget shortages. We are out of money in the coroner's budget, and that one, as you know, we put in $100,000 for it and hope that we don't exceed that, but unfortunately we have mid-year. So I'm requesting $50,000 to get us a little further through the year. Hopefully it'll get us to the end. That's a referral to finance to determine a source of funding. And then 3C, we're running short in our supplies code. We did use $5,000 from there to purchase Chromebooks. So we're hoping we can get that back from the contingent account to get us through the rest of the year.
Move B and C.
B and C, thank you. Second, Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? Chairwoman?
I would just like the record to reflect that you can certainly transfer out of the salary codes as well for the Chromebooks. That was a result of reducing stipends at the beginning of the year. We did leave those savings in the general fund. So there is, savings in other areas as well to cover those costs.
Thank you for that reminder. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Okay, and then 3D, that's a request to amend the prior resolution on the standard reporting. That resolution from 2020, was sent into the state retirement system in 2020. We just got, or the treasurer's office just got a memo from them saying that they reviewed it and they found a couple of discrepancies that they wanted us to update and re-adopt the resolution. So that's what I'm asking for now.
Amanda, what year was this from?
2020.
2020.
They
Okay.
just are finally getting to it, I guess.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll move that. we
Thank you.
amend it.
Motion second by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Amanda. That's it for you. And next we have the self-insurance administrator, Ms. Clute, coming to the podium. Thank you for being here and waiting for us.
Thank you. My first item 4A is a request for a new contract with AWPRX. They're our pharmacy network vendor. We did an RFP. They are the incumbent and the lowest proposal.
Okay.
Do you want me to do B right with it?
Let's take this one. Supervisor McGowan.
Well, questions? Or
Do you have a
she-
question or do you want to move it?
We'll move it.
I'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a second.
Did he make a motion?
He did.
Oh, now second.
Good. Thank you. Brad,
Well, no, I was just making a motion to keep things moving.
did you have a question?
No,
Okay.
I was making the motion.
So this is in, hold on. Yep, it's in our packet there with the bids. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, item 4B is a request for a new contract with One Call Medical as diagnostic testing network vendor for the self-insurance plan. Again, we did an RFP. They are the incumbent. They are the lowest proposal. There is no tab sheet in your packet because One Call Medical's pricing is proprietary.
I'll move it.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay. Thank you. Second by Supervisor McGowan. Garrity McGowan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Item 4C is a request for a new contract with Carisk Intelligent Clearinghouse for the purpose of becoming a submission partner to satisfy the Workers' Comp Board mandate under their CMS 1500 initiative. This was something that we only had to get quotes for. This was the lowest quote. And that's a new contract with no termination date, I'm hoping, whatever the county attorney approves.
What is all this stuff behind 4C?
That's all our.
I mean,
That's going to be an item that should be 4D.
okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you. So for 4C, do we have a motion? No, right?
I'll make a motion. I have a question.
Supervisor Garrity, I'll come back to you for the motion and a
Exactly what
second.
they do, Amy?
They are an intermediary between the medical providers and us. The Workers' Comp Board is mandating that we receive bills electronically starting on October 1st, and that we contract with what's called submission partners. So the CARISC is a submission partner. So they'll take the information from the doctor, translate it into a document that we can understand, and then we will send it back to them to send back to the doctor what we've, an explanation of what we've paid.
So Supervisor Garrity made the motion. We need a second. Supervisor McGowan, is there discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries.
If I may just add a D to that as
Yeah.
as an informational, in your packet, it's labeled 4C as the 2022 plan participant assessments, a total of 1,250,000 and change for the workers' comp plan out to the participants. So we now send these to the participants for them to use in their budgets. It's just an informational item.
Great. Any questions from our town supervisors here who may see their assessment there? Questions? Nope. Thank you for all your hard work. I know you've been working on this and
Thank you.
good.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
All right. Oh, boy. Treasurer Swan was not able to be here. Let's see if there's something in 5. Is this 5? He has a resolution request here. We've talked about this at the last committee meeting. We did give him kind of a green light to bring us back a proposal. So if you'll see there, compensation would be vacation days that could be rolled over and used in the following year, no later than June 30th. And that would be separate and independent, it says, from the normal allowable vacation carryover policy. Supervisor Conover.
Subject to the county administrator's concurrence, I mean, I think that a lot of people were delayed in their ability to take time during this last year. And if we want, on a one-year basis, we want to extend that. Otherwise, just use it or lose it, right?
Right, and we did pass that resolution for this year to allow people to carry over for 2020. This is actually going to give them additional days.
I know. That's why I'm saying subject to,
Okay,
you're saying additional.
days as a benefit
I
from the time worked during the coronavirus pandemic.
thought we were going to take that up second. So it's all one and the same. Okay, I get it.
Yeah,
All right. Mhm.
well, how he has it on here, Ron, look at in right before number 6A.
I'm looking.
Yes, Supervisor Garrity.
Didn't the committee already discuss this? Some committee?
We discussed it at our last committee meeting. There have been some discussions outside of committee meeting with the administrator and the treasurer and some others, but no decisions were made. There was talk of, we did not do the premium pay or hazard pay. Do you want to help me out here? Please?
Right. Yeah, we didn't do hazard pay the way some counties did. And there were certain departments that were required. The treasurer's office is one of them, where all the employees were still required to report on site. There were certain departments where the employees were required not to report. We were under state mandates at the time to have essential workers only. And then there were other departments where my department's a good example of that, where we had the ability to be remote, but we were often here anyway. So I think what the goal with this policy would try to advance is recognize that there were people who still came here, put themselves in harm's way due to the fact that they were here and not home, and to compensate them in a manner that wouldn't create a financial burden on the county.
I'll move it.
Okay,
I'm going to second it.
Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Discussion, yes.
One quick question.
Supervisor Driscoll, yep.
Individuals who are hired during the pandemic or left employment of the county during the pandemic, will we be prorating those days accordingly, or no?
Because the idea here, if I'm given leeway to administer this, the idea here would be to award extra vacation time, prorate it, for the amount of time during a set. So we're going to take, let's say, for example, it was March through June, whatever those dates might be. Go back and look at the payroll records where people punched to see how much of the time they were here, how much of the time they were remote. And if it's going to be 5 vacation days, let's say, prorated. If they were here 100% of that time, they get all 5. If they were here for a fraction of that time, they get the fraction. The stipulations would be that those vacation days may never be cashed out upon
Okay.
separation.
Right.
They may only be used.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, even though I'm not on your committee. Did we have a specific policy that dictated who was mandated to come in and who was not?
It was left to department heads' discretion.
And have we discussed or addressed how this would apply to employees like DPW employees who may have reported to another facility or may have gone directly from home to a work site without logging in?
Well, I think the distinction would be it doesn't matter which work site you're at. The distinction is whether you're home or whether you're physically at work.
I would just caution that without a policy that directed department heads, and that having been left to the discretion of each department head, this is a dangerous move.
I hear what you're saying. And like Ryan mentioned, there were department heads who required their people to stay home. And so they're not going to get the benefit because they were told to stay home and work from home as remotely as possible, as much as they could. So
And those people worked very, very hard.
I know. And everyone was under stress. And there was that window of time though, where I feel like we were under that mandate to have as few people here as possible.
Right.
I want to do something. I just don't want there to be hurt feelings of people who were like, I was working too. And I was told not to come in. So I didn't. So now I'm not going to get the benefit because I was at home. But there's also people who were here and they were putting themselves at risk more than others who were able to work from home. But that wasn't their fault that they were working from home. It's just a lot to juggle. Yeah.
To address the supervisor's concern, that's why I would say I wouldn't get into whether someone opted to come in or whether someone was told you must come in. I would just, if we are going to do this, I would say just strictly look at the time when people were in. Don't look at whether they were told to be here or not. Look at the time they were in and acknowledge that there was a health risk to that and award based on that. If we're to go down this road, that's the way I would do it.
And I do have a question. Is this going to apply to department heads or no?
It won't apply to me, but I would be open to have it apply to department heads.
If they were here, I guess that's fine. Yep. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Supervisor Hogan. It is a difficult thing. Ryan, I really do believe the way you just stated it, handling it, the best, the shortest, and it doesn't, this is a catch-22 in my opinion. We're damned if we do and damned if we don't, but I would like to be able to award. This is very little for some of the people that were here full-time. And doing that and coming into this building and doing what they had to do the COVID. So, but I like the way you're going to handle it, it's physically here and the less, the less involvement of trying to figure it all out. I think the better we are. Not that I'm trying to hide anything, but I would like to compensate the employees that did come in and didn't have the choice to stay home.
I'm going to go around the room here. Supervisor Conover.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I am on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, how does this apply to those that were on an on-call basis, specifically DPW? Those people did come in, they did plow the roads, or they did come in during the day to take care of certain duties. Would this apply to those kinds of departments as well?
Are you asking outside of regular work hours if we would consider?
Well, if they're on an on-call basis, it's possible that they also had to report during work hours. You don't know when they got snowstorms. You don't know when they came in to plow the roads or salt or any other public works or any other kind of situation. So I guess what I'm saying is just how's this handled? Anyone that was on an on-call basis that was called in.
I think what we would do is we would go back to the time records. If someone reported, it's going to be reflected in the time records. And I would take, for instance, you have a 40-hour work week. If someone reported for 30 of those hours, then they get credit for 75% of that week. That's the way I would handle it.
Okay, and just if I may, as a follow-on,
Yes.
Those people that were on an on-call basis that came in as time and a half. I'm not.
No, I don't think
putting you
that
on the
matters.
spot. What
No.
I'm saying is that I just want to make sure that this has been thought through all of the departments and that we.
Do you want to give us, me, the HR director and the treasurer, some broad parameters to work this out, and we'll work out details and bring it back?
I like that.
Yeah, I do
like
too.
that idea. You see what I'm saying?
We've been rolling this around, but maybe now if this is the direction we're going to go, we can get some more details on it and bring it back next month when Treasurer Swan is here too. But I'm going to take comment. Go ahead, Chairwoman.
Thank you. I am sorry I stepped out for a moment, but again, I know we have been discussing this for quite some time. I would prefer to follow Supervisor Conover's lead with this in terms of working on this down the road. But that ARPA survey that we put out, the initial results, they're showing us by the hundreds, people talking about time off and premium pay and, you know, a discussion around how we're going to look at this as a result of COVID, response to COVID, not just those physically sitting at their desks doing hard work, but also those on call, those going out to home visits to speak to concerns of DSS or probation, law enforcement. There's been so many different opinions that have come in through this survey process that we'll all be able to look at in a month. I also thought that we had a discussion about implementing a time off award nomination form like the federal government does, that would be available not just in COVID, but down the road for consideration. And I knew we discussed this, Ryan, before you were out in June and had kind of tabled it to have more discussion once you got back. And you've certainly been very busy, but I would appreciate the opportunity to look at, you know, a time off award program that's consistent with some federal guidelines as well that might be helpful, instead of just a one-time award for responding during COVID. And I thought that was dialogue we were going to continue to have. So I don't know if you're
That's
looking,
perfectly fine. I just think that's separate and yeah, it sort of fell off my radar.
right?
So we can have that discussion. I would like to understand better the availability to use the ARPA funds. I don't know at this point. So I do agree with coming back. Just a second, Supervisor Conover. I want to come around to Supervisor Hogan, then I'll come back to you.
Thank you for another opportunity to speak to this, and I think the chairwoman touched on it. We should look at this in the context of the ARPA funds. But I also want to caution the committee on moving forward with this and really clearly define in your heads what it is exactly we're rewarding. Because if we're going to talk about rewarding employees for taking a risk or rewarding employees who endangered their health, I don't know why we would go down this road now when on every day our DPWs out there and sometimes in dangerous situations. Every time a member of DSS steps into someone's home, they're endangering themselves. I just want us to be very clear on what we're rewarding here. Thank you.
Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, I think this amplifies on what I said, Brian. Just think it through all the departments, including public safety and corrections and all that. And I classify a lot of that as on call, but some did come in, some required. Right? I think we need to think it through and also there's some kind of a bargain.
Does this apply to the sheriff's department?
That would be a conversation we would definitely have to have with the sheriff. There's certainly no department. There are many departments that put themselves at risk, and the sheriff is certainly high among them. But the idea is to try to not create a financial impact on taxpayers. So adding vacation time could carry implications there.
Supervisor Thomas?
But there is a financial impact. I mean, it might not be direct, but there still is a financial impact. So I would like to see some estimation on what that is.
In terms of filling shifts.
If someone's not working, somebody has to fill
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I concur that we need to take our time and get this right. I also just want to point out there's a number of departments that I'm aware of that had people coming in kind of like a staggered schedule. They may be in for 2 hours into the office, and then the balance of that day was spent at home. I don't want to complicate things, but how do you measure that?
Yeah, I think that's what we've really been struggling with. So we'll take it up. We'll ask Treasurer Swan and Ryan to work on it some more and bring it back to us next month. I'd like to keep us moving though, Supervisor Garrity. And also I'm given a note to remind all the supervisors to speak into your mics.
You want me to withdraw my motion?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes, please.
All right, I withdraw my motion. I was going to get up and do a point of order and withdraw it, but.
Would you like to stand up and
Yes,
Do-
point of order. I withdraw my motion.
point well taken? We will withdraw the motion. Thank you.
And give Ryan, but I want us to know that Ryan's gonna
Yeah.
expend hours with Jackie and whoever to try to get us a number.
We'll work on it.
Okay, good. Okay.
All right, next is our district attorney. Agenda items. These two, I believe it's two, yes, did not go through the Criminal Justice Committee, but I believe they are here with the sort of green light of the chair. Yep. Do you want to speak to that, Supervisor Leggett?
Yeah, I would. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, to introduce this here, and I want to thank Administrator Moore for bringing this up as well at this time. As the district attorney had mentioned in previous meetings, the staffing, the need, the caseloads they are carrying, that they have a lot of work to do and need more help. And we were not able to get this onto the agenda for the Criminal Justice Committee meeting. I'm happy to see it at this time in year to get it up and going. So I want to thank administration and others for getting this moved forward.
And we have Assistant DA here to help us out.
Yeah, hi, thank you. My name is Matt Buren. I'm Jason Carasone's first Assistant DA. I've been with the county for 16 years, all with the District Attorney's Office. I've worked with Jason the entire time. Kate Hogan hired me way back when. I'll be honest with you, this is my first appearance in front of this board. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I watched Jason's presentation just the other day. I don't think I could do it justice if I was to try to summarize it. There really is no brief way to summarize it for those of you who weren't part of that committee, but I think, and I see some faces here that I know were present for that presentation. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions anyone may have had for Jason. But other than that, I'll stop. All right,
So
I like no questions.
I think I don't believe I was there for the presentation, but the basis is the two positions. So a new assistant district attorney and the position of legal clerk are both brand new positions effective later in the month after the August board meeting. Does anyone have any questions? Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you, Chairman. I was here. And over the years that I have been here, I've listened to our district attorney speak, and really he speaks well. And he's kind of forewarned us, and I've kind of seen this coming. And I really after listening to his explanation of what's going down with all the new mandates and everything going down, I'd like to make a motion to move this forward.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor McGowan. For both of those, A and B. Do I have a second? Supervisor Driscoll? Discussion. Yes, Supervisor Garrity.
I agree with this, but I think it's time that maybe we pen a letter to the state of New York and our legislators and say, we're having to expend more dollars, county dollars. This is not like a grant, like the Harrell Herring grant.
Mm-hmm.
We're having to expend more county dollars to keep up with everything that they're changing on a state level. So I think it's important that we continue to let them know that, all the changes they're making to the judicial system is costing the local taxpayers more. I think it gets lost.
Mhm.
Every time we add on to keep up with what they have imposed upon us. I
Yeah.
fully support this.
Is that an amendment?
So-
You want me to make an amendment on that one?
Well, I would suggest we just have government ops take it up
Yeah.
as an item. So can we make a note to put that
Sure.
on there, ask them to put that on their agenda because I don't see Supervisor Beatty here anymore. Just a minute, Supervisor Driscoll?
Just very quickly, what the DA articulated very well recently was that money certainly comes into the public defender's office, but those same types of resources aren't available for the district attorney's office. And for the justice to be served, I mean, you really have to have both of those institutions playing on a level playing field. And I certainly support these two positions. Thank you.
For a long time, it was the defender's office was trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
But we do have that grant money, and so I think it's balancing out. Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll covered it. I will just add that caseload management is, there's mandate for the public defender to hit certain caseloads and not necessarily on the DA's office here as well. But we know that the cases are going up and the load needs to be carried by more people.
If I could just piggyback on that comment, yeah, it's accurate. We get everything, and there are caseload caps. Understandably, why there are reasons for them for caseload caps on the defense side of things. But every case gets funneled into our office, and it's thousands, and we can handle it. It'd be great to have help though to do that. So we thank you very much for considering this. But part of this discovery. These new laws for discovery, I think Jason really hit the nail on the head when he stated part of the purpose is to help out the defense and the defendant better understand the charges against them. But we're the ones who provide that discovery to the defense. So for that process to work, for the defense to have that better understanding of their cases, they need to be able to get this information, and we're the ones who have to gather it all from everywhere and then funnel it out to the defense side of things. So yeah, they're being funded greatly through indigent legal services and other sources, but there's zero coming our way, unfortunately. So we appreciate the county taking this up and looking at this issue.
We have a motion, a second. Supervisor Wild, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, thank you. I'm going to be really quick. Is our caseload increasing, or is this just a part of the discovery?
Well, I don't have hard numbers on caseloads specifically for you, but if you think about the law enforcement agencies in Warren County, you have the state police, you have the sheriff's department, you have the Glens Falls Police Department. That doesn't take into account environmental conservation officers and even Bolton PD, they have their own PD. Every single case that is generated comes to the DA's office. We also take on special prosecutions from other counties, and we do appeals and everything. So that's always been the way. That's always been how it worked for over 200 years. What hasn't always been this way is the discovery rules. For 200 years, discovery would be incrementally turned over to the other side. Sometimes it would be turned over only when it was asked for by the defense. Other times it would be turned over when mandated by law, but that would usually be way down the road after plea negotiations have broken down and we would need to have a hearing or a trial on the matter. I wanted to bring with me some visual aids, but it would be about 8 boxes of paper just to show you one file that we have that's currently under appeal. And that's a file that became trial ready. It went to trial, and it's not 8 boxes because of the appeal. It's 8 boxes because of when it started. And then when the conviction was had, it turned into about 8 boxes of materials. That was under the old way of doing things. The new way of doing things is we have to take every single case at the outset and treat it as though it's ready for trial and turn all of that material over to the defense in a very, very short period of time. And so that's the new burden. And the law, there's many laws and requirements that we have to fulfill. But one of them is that if there is something in the possession of any law enforcement agency in the entire state of New York that's relevant to the subject matter of that case, we are presumed to be in possession of it, even if nobody in our office is even personally aware that it exists. So we are in a constant state on every case of asking for law enforcement agencies to provide us with information. And we're under an obligation to constantly be turning it over as it comes in. I want to thank the chairwoman for allowing me to leave earlier because I was working on another file. And while working on that other file, it was a sheriff's department's file. And in reading one of the responding officer's narratives, he pointed out that the state police assisted on this particular investigation. And I thought to myself, oh boy, I don't have anything from the state police on this case. So I immediately fired off an email saying, hey, can you reach out to the state police and ask for their paperwork, their body cameras, anything they've generated on this case? So it's the caseloads, whether they're greater or lesser, this issue is discovery, and it's at the outset of every case. And that includes traffic as well. It's a lot.
I understand. Madam Chair. I apologize.
In the
Madam
mic.
Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that there's no underlying cause, whether it be narcotics or some other thing that's going on in society that we need to worry about. This is all purely about the discovery process then.
Well, I wouldn't say purely about the discovery process. I mean, let's not forget about the victims. I mean, we want to make sure. One of the things that frustrates me, generally speaking, about our criminal justice system is that more often than not, people will remember the defendant's name and they'll forget about the victim's name, and they'll never even learn it. But victims of crime, it's hard to argue that a victim of a crime has asked to be part of the criminal justice system. They're thrust into it. And it's not something they planned on happening that day or at any point in their life. So, and they don't choose who prosecutes the case either. You know, a defendant can, if the defendant can afford their own lawyer, they can choose their representation. But the residents of Warren County, the victims of crime in Warren County, they don't have a choice. They have the Warren County DA's office, and we're pretty good, and it's great for them. But they don't have a choice in it. And so we want to make sure we have enough resources to make sure that all victims of crime get their justice. And if something is as simple as turning over materials is getting in the way of a victim getting justice in a case, I mean, that's terrible. It's something where we didn't personally know that there was something in an individual's notepad that was, a note that was taken down, and we're not turning that over. That'd be terrible to then call the victim up and say, I'm sorry, the case didn't turn out the way we thought it could under the circumstances because of this error that we didn't know about. So it's in part having the right amount of resources to be able to handle this obligation at the outset of the case. And then, of course, developing that talent, turning them into good trial lawyers, and being able to deliver if the case does have to go to trial.
All right, thank you. I think everyone does appreciate the need for this and the work that your office does, Jason's office. Yes?
Yes,
Supervisor
thank you.
McGowan.
And we do. The only thing
And I'd
I would
to
like,
call the question.
the only thing I would like to ask if Mike would have, Supervisor Wild had an opportunity just review what Jason came up and said. It was quite empowering of all the work that's involved now with all the new discovery stuff. And it was just really, it really just kind of took me by surprise that there's a lot more work involved in this, in protecting really the people that need to be protected on the costs of the county. And that's why we need to send out the letter too. So if you have an opportunity to watch just that little quick segment with him, it would give you a great understanding of what's happening.
Okay, so that,
Oh, okay.
you two, that was, Amanda is telling me that was our last criminal justice meeting. So that should be online if anyone wants to review it. Going to call the question unless you want to speak up, Supervisor Chairwoman.
No, I just want to say I have it in the direct minute. I'll just send it out to the whole board.
Oh, great. Thank you. Good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
I don't see anyone from the public here unless the sheriff wants to speak to us. Please, no. Okay. All right, guys. I think that's it. Guess I'll ask Dawn if there's anybody online making comments at the risk of,
Not that I'm aware of. I think we are comment free on YouTube.
thank you very much. Motion to adjourn, Supervisor Conover, second by Supervisor Garrity. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you all.